podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. Because every situation is unique, you should consult with a qualified legal professional for advice specific to your circumstances. If you need legal guidance, please reach out to an accredited attorney or contact us to schedule a consultation. Hello, and welcome back to the Veteran Benefits Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Deming. Today, we are going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is secondary service connection. There's been a lot of buzz and some alarmist videos circulating on the internet as of the time of this filming in May 2026 regarding secondary service connection, especially the updates to VA's manual, the M21, about but-for causation and what exactly that means as it relates to case law that came out on the topic on secondary service connected condition and the Spicer case specifically. So we're going to dig into all of this and give you some practical tips and some guidance for navigating how to make sure that VA is granting everything that you're entitled to and claiming those secondary service connected conditions. So first off, I want to talk about what is a secondary service connected condition. So a secondary condition is a disability that is caused or aggravated by an already service connected condition. And VA awards service connection for disabilities that are the result of or would not have occurred but for the primary service connected condition. This covers aggravation of non-service connected conditions as well. So some key examples of this would be knee pain that's caused by compensating for a bad back, complications from medications. A lot of times we'll see GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disorder. So it's acid reflux that's caused by taking pain medications. Too many NSAIDs, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories, can really mess up your stomach. So if you were popping that vitamin M Motrin all during service and now you have indigestion and acid reflux, that could be caused by something that's service connected. We can also see medications or treatment, chemotherapy, a lot of downstream side effects from a condition that's already service connected. So I want to talk about the but-for causation because that's something that's causing a lot of confusion right now. So in 2023, there was a case that was decided by the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims called Spicer v. McDonough. And in that case, the veteran had service-connected leukemia, and he had non-service connected knee conditions. And the leukemia condition that was service connected prevented him from getting surgery that his doctors had recommended for the knees, because if he went in for that surgery, it was going to cause complications. They just didn't think it was advisable for him to get the surgery because of his leukemia. So, but for his leukemia, he would have been able to get additional treatment that could have helped his knees and made the pain less, but he wasn't able to get that because of his service-connected leukemia. And so the case went all the way up because leukemia doesn't cause knee issues. Leukemia wasn't the primary factor that made his knees become bad, but the leukemia was the thing that stopped him from getting the treatment. And ultimately the court said, yes, he is entitled to, at least on an aggravation basis, get some service-connected compensation for his knees, but for the leukemia, that's the but-for condition, his knees could have been treated and could have improved. So that but-for causation is the key. And the court said that the but-for causation is less stringent than proximate cause. So proximate cause would be like, did the leukemia cause his knees to deteriorate? And the answer there is no. At least in this case, his leukemia did not cause his knees to deteriorate. So but for, some examples of but for, it can be a longer chain of events that cause the condition. So in one of the social media posts recently, I gave the example, but for the fact that I snoozed my alarm, I would have left the house on time. Had I left the house on time, I would not have been crossing the intersection at the time that other person ran the red light, and I wouldn't have gotten in an accident. So, but for snoozing my alarm clock, I wouldn't have been in an accident. I wouldn't have been late for work. I wouldn't have had these injuries, whatever it is. It wasn't the snoozing the alarm clock that caused the injuries. It was the chain of events that kind of led up to that. So it really does expand the ability to get service-connected compensation for conditions that were aggravated or made worse by, or somehow in the chain of causation were triggered by a service-connected condition. Now, that said, if you look at the M21, I think the language from a legal perspective is very clear, but we don't always have attorneys reading and interpreting the regulations from VA's side. So is there a chance that VA is going to get it wrong and they're going to say, oh, but for causation increases the standard of proof or makes it more stringent and you can't get secondary service connection under the but for standard? It makes mistakes all the time. This is a new change to the M21. The case came down in 2023, but they didn't update VA's internal manual, the M21, until May of 2026. So there's a 3-year gap between when the case came down and when guidance was issued for VA personnel to apply that case. And that guidance kind of just copies and pastes the language from the case into the manual. Now, what we're going to see from that, it's hard to say. But if you get denials and you think that VA is applying the wrong standard and you do think that something should be service connected, it's important to reach out to an accredited representative, an accredited attorney or claims agent who can help you navigate those nuances to make sure that VA is actually following the law correctly. Okay, so there's a few different ways that secondary service connection can come into play. One of the most common ones, it's really not even secondary service connection, but it's VA is required to rate all side effects or all tertiary third order effects of a condition. So if you have service-connected diabetes and you also have diabetic peripheral neuropathy, VA has to rate that. And it's kind of a secondary condition. It's related to your underlying diabetes claim. It's really part of the diabetes claim. So it's directly connected to the underlying claim to your service connected condition. If you have a bad back condition and your back is compressed, the spine is compressed on the nerves, and you've got sciatic nerve pain or sciatica or any other, which is basically nerve pain in the lower extremities from your bad back, that has to be rated. VA is required to rate anything that medical records show that's caused by or directly connected to the underlying service-connected condition. So if your back is connected and your back condition causes nerve pain, VA has to rate that. So it's not even really a secondary condition, but it's important to be thinking along those lines. I know I've talked to a lot of veterans who don't even realize that the nerve pain that they're experiencing is from one of their underlying service-connected conditions. So that's directly tied to the service-connected condition. Then you have aggravation. So a service-connected condition can make a non-service-connected condition worse. That's kind of a good example of that would be what happened in the Spicer case. So in the Spicer case, remember, the person had non-service-connected knee conditions, injured his knees outside of service, but the service-connected condition aggravated that because he couldn't get the surgery that he needed to repair his knees. We have medication and treatment side effects. So especially if somebody is going through chemotherapy or radiation therapy for cancer, it's not just the time that they have active cancer, that they're actively under active treatment for the cancer, because then they should be rated 100% for active cancer. But all the side effects. So if the radiation burned your throat, if the chemo caused lymph node swelling that is causing you not to be able to use your arm, or to have sinus infection issues related to the treatment, those would be secondary service-connected conditions from the treatment. If you had a surgery for your back and it caused a painful scar, that scar would be a secondary service-connected condition because your back was service-connected, you had to have surgery for it. Complications from the surgery would be also service-connected. Medications are very common. If you look at the side effects of medication, there's usually a long list of possible side effects. If you're taking a medication for a service-connected condition and it's causing you to have indigestion, or it's causing neuropathy, or it's causing lack of sleep or erectile dysfunction, any number of side effects from dizziness, any number of side effects from that medication, those could also be service connected. So you're going to look at the separate rating code and rate those, and VA is going to rate those as a secondary service-connected condition. And the standard of proof for this is still at least as likely as not. So we talked about the but-for causation, which is different from proximate cause, the thing that caused it. But-for causation is kind of, was there something in the chain of effects that contributed to developing this condition? So the but-for causation and the proximate cause causation, those are how we look at kind of how attenuated or how closely the cause has to be of your secondary condition needs to be to your service-connected condition. The standard of proof is how much proof do you need to have that something was the cause of your secondary condition. So standard of proof is still always going to be at least as likely as not. This but-for causation, again, I said makes it easier to get secondary service-connected condition if they're applying the laws correctly, but it doesn't change at least as likely as not. So every piece of evidence has to be at least as likely as not for VA to grant it. Is it at least as likely as not that the stomach condition that you're experiencing was caused by the medications that you've been prescribed for your service-connected condition? And if a doctor or a medical professional can say that your secondary condition is at least as likely as not caused by the treatment or caused directly by the service-connected condition, then VA is going to grant you that disability and assign a rating for you, and you're going to get compensation for it. So some common tips to help evaluate this and kind of put together your claims. You definitely, if you're taking medications for any service-connected conditions, you want to review the list of common side effects and see if any of those apply to you. And then you want to claim those conditions. If there is a listed side effect that you're experiencing that side effect, you want to make sure that you're putting in a claim for that. You want to talk to your doctors and say, hey, I'm having this symptom. Could this be related to my underlying service-connected condition? Could it be related to a medication I'm taking for the underlying service-connected condition? Your doctors often will be versed in how conditions are connected to each other. You can also look at some of the Facebook forums and the internet to see common connections. And I think that's a good place to start, but I do want to caution you. If you're kind of just Googling, can my PTSD cause my sleep apnea? Well, yes, there is medical research that shows that PTSD can contribute to the development of sleep apnea. It does not always mean that in every circumstance with your medical history and your set of facts that your PTSD caused your sleep apnea. For example, if you developed sleep apnea and you were diagnosed with sleep apnea and then deployed and had a traumatic experience and developed PTSD, you can't say that your PTSD caused your sleep apnea because your sleep apnea started before you even developed PTSD. So it's a very fact-specific determination. We get a lot of clients that come to us and people who call in who ask, well, I have a buddy who got this condition secondarily service connected to that condition. So can you do it for me too? And the answer is always maybe. We want to have a doctor look at your medical records or a medical professional look at your records. We're going to look at your records and determine if, in your case, if that connection makes sense for you too. Just because somebody else won a secondary service connection for a certain condition tied to a service condition doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to apply in your situation. So we want to look very carefully at the specific facts of your case and figure out what the best path forward is to get you the maximum rating based on your medical records and your medical history. So as you're gathering evidence to prove secondary service connection, you want to gather all of your diagnoses. If you're treating at VA, all of that should be in My Healthy Vet, which is the online portal that you can use to access your VA medical records. If you're treating with private doctors, you might want to pull those together in one place, get all the records showing your medication lists, your diagnoses, your problem lists, pull all of those together. You might want to get a medical professional to look at them and write a nexus letter or a medical opinion, an independent medical opinion. If your doctors aren't comfortable writing something, or if you think it's kind of a more attenuated connection and there's very specific facts in your case that are going to make it more complex, sometimes getting an independent medical opinion can be very helpful. Sometimes having lay statements that describe the history of your symptoms can be very helpful for showing VA that the two conditions are linked. So, for example, you might say, I never had insomnia, and then I had to have surgery for my back, and I went under general anesthesia, and I woke up from general anesthesia. After that, I was never able to fall asleep and stay asleep at night. I don't even know if anesthesia can cause insomnia from a medical perspective. We haven't had a case with exactly that fact pattern, but that timeline would show, okay, well, you never had this secondary condition until immediately after you had the surgery for the primary condition. So that timeline is going to help support the fact that one caused the other. So getting statements from a spouse or a friend or someone who's witnessed what you've been going through, or even writing something yourself describing what you've witnessed, what symptoms you've experienced that you can witness. You're not competent from VA's perspective, unless you are a doctor or a medical professional yourself. You're not competent to write a medical opinion. So you can't say, I know that this caused this, unless you can show that you have the medical training to assert that medical opinion. But you can say, hey, I used to never have headaches. And then after this happened, I started getting headaches all the time. They've gotten worse to the point where I'm having nausea and visual auras and having to go lie down in a cold, dark room. So you're able to describe what you experience, even though you may not have the medical training to give a formal medical opinion about A caused B. Once you have all of the evidence that you think you're able to gather yourself, you want to file your claim for the secondary condition. We see a lot of veterans sort of not thinking about secondary conditions. They're so focused on getting that primary condition granted that they don't even think about the secondary conditions. I would say if you can, if the timing works out, I would put them all on one claim form. I would, start at the beginning. You don't have to wait until you get your back service connected to then claim the sciatic nerve pain from your back, or then claim the knee condition that's caused by altered gait or compensating for your bad back. If you can put them all on the same claim form, then when you get them granted, the effective date is going to go back to the same date. You're going to get more back pay for it. So if you've waited, add them in now. If you haven't, some people think, oh, well, I have to get the back granted first before I can even apply for the secondary conditions. Put them all in at the same time if you can. VA is going to handle them they're probably going to deny the secondary claims until the primary claim gets connected, but you want to kind of keep going after all of them at the same time if you can, just to preserve the most amount of back pay when VA finally unravels it and figures it all out for you. When you go in for a C&P exam, you want to be very well prepared to explain to the doctor or the examiner why you think your service-connected condition caused your secondary condition. So talk about your history of symptoms, talk about how kind of the chain of events, how things unraveled, and why you think there's a connection. Again, in most cases, you're not the medical expert kind of telling them what to write, but the more you can connect the dots for them and help them see, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. Okay, so because of your back and, when it flares up, you get tense and you can't walk and you trip over things and that caused your knee to go out. Okay, well, if you can unravel it enough, then the examiner is more likely to see things your way and more likely to write a favorable opinion. And if you get a favorable C&P exam, of course, VA is more likely to grant the secondary service connected condition for you. And then if you're denied, don't take it personally. I mean, take it however you want. Take a beat though, because VA does get secondary service connected conditions wrong very frequently. There's a lot of places where VA can mess up when they're evaluating secondary service connected conditions. So you file the claim, and then somebody within the VA system has to write a request for a medical opinion. And if that request gets written in a funny way, we get nonsensical VA opinions on it. So one of the most common ones we see VA get wrong a lot is when we're using obesity as an intermediary cause. So, for example, veteran has bad knees. Because of the bad knees, veteran can't work out, gains a lot of weight. Because of the excess weight, veteran develops sleep apnea. So VA's medical examiners will get the request for a medical opinion, and they'll come back and say, well, knees are not connected to the respiratory system, and therefore knees didn't cause sleep apnea. Well, they're not applying the but-for causation. They're not applying how the knees, but for the knees, the veteran wouldn't have gained the weight. Without the weight, the veteran wouldn't have developed sleep apnea. They're kind of trying to apply a straightforward, direct connection between knees and a respiratory condition. And because the question's asked wrong, the examiner's not going to get it right, and then the VA rater's not going to get it right. So we see that a lot, and it's one of the pieces at ProVet Legal, how we help our clients unravel that. We help point out where VA got it wrong, help get additional evidence if it's needed, or just help get VA to re-request the exams in a way that's going to actually address our theory of service connection. When I say our theory, it's when we're talking about secondary service connection, how the service connecting condition contributed to causing the secondary condition. So there are a lot of ways that a condition can be secondarily service connected to a service connected condition. And we're not going to go over every single way in this episode or cover every single way, but I wanted to put that bug in your ear so that people can start thinking about how their service connected conditions really impact them, the full spectrum of how a service connected condition impacts their quality of life and impacts their functionality in other aspects. So the chain of causation, if your tinnitus stops you from sleeping and not being able to sleep well, stops you from being as functional at work, and because of that you lose your job. Well, tinnitus, even though it's only rated at 10%, could contribute to mental health conditions, could contribute to unemployability. So there could be, with this but-for causation, there could be a lot of secondary service connected conditions that VA should be considering. And so I want you as the veteran to be thinking about all of those secondary service connected conditions and possibilities when you're putting together your claim and when you're asking VA for everything that you rightfully deserve. And I want to reiterate that the updates in the law from the Spicer case from 2023 that were implemented in the M21, the VA's manual update in May of 2026, that those updates are intended to be pro-veteran. They're intended to make it easier for VA to grant secondary service connection. If VA is getting it wrong, we hope that you reach out to an accredited claims agent. We're happy to take the calls here at ProVet Legal, but we don't want people to give up because in the event that VA applies the wrong standard or misunderstands this but-for causation issue. I want to caution people against kind of getting sucked into some of the clickbait online that you need to listen to this now. If you don't file your claim within this period, you're going to lose. There are deadlines, but I think sometimes some of the people on social media, people out there are trying to use scare tactics to get veterans to take action as a call to action. And in my opinion, that's not ethical unless there is actually something that they need to do to preserve their rights, just kind of stirring up this fear in veterans. So I want you guys to be reaching out to reliable sources, fact-checking stuff that you hear on the internet. If something sounds like they're going after veterans, look deeper into it. I'm not saying that everything VA does is going to actually benefit veterans, but neither side of the political spectrum really wants to be accused of being the party that took benefits away from veterans. So it's not politically tenable to make huge moves that are going to majorly negatively impact veterans. And when stuff does come up that has unintended consequences or consequences broader than what VA intended when they implemented something, VA has been responsive to advocates and public outcry about those changes and those unintended consequences. So take a deep breath. VA is not perfect. They're far from perfect, but not everything is as bad as the internet makes it out to be. So I'll get off my soapbox. I just, when I see misinformation or skewed information being put out there that's causing people to panic, it really gets under my skin. So with that in mind, I hope I kind of sparked a conversation. And if you guys have questions, please drop them in the comments. If this information was helpful, please share it with your fellow veterans. And if you have suggestions for other topics that you'd like us to cover, please let us know in the comments, and we'll talk to you next time.